There is a world in which the state pension may not be there for you and I.
Abigail Foster grew up seeing money as a source of stress and decided to change that.
If you own a home, you are successful. No, it is not rude to talk about money. If anything, it's dangerous not to.
She was one of the first people to talk about finances online and is determined to teach young people the importance of understanding money.
What are we doing about financial education? I don't personally think that the government are doing enough right now. If they wanted to, they could.
I've had an accountant horror story.
Accountants are like hairdressers. Go and find one that suits you. Not every hairdresser does every hairstyle. A lot of people think that property is the only way to build wealth, and it's not.
If you've ever felt like money is a language everyone else speaks but you don't, then this episode is for you. And before we get into the conversation, if you could do me a favour that literally takes you 2 seconds, hit the subscribe button or leave a 5-star review depending on what platform you're listening on. It really helps us to continue to grow the podcast and bring you guests to help you live a happier, healthier life. Thank you. Abby, we have had so many questions in from our community, all about money, buying houses, the gender pay gap, everything. And I'm so excited to cover that. But first of all, I want to go back to the beginning because you are a chartered accountant and now you have committed your life to educating the masses on finances. Yeah. What motivated you to make that change?
Yeah, I was a chartered accountant. I started in industry. So as opposed to, you hear traditionally chartered accountants, especially ACA, they usually work in practice. They work at like the Big Four or an accountancy practice. And I worked at Vogue, so Condé Nast, and then I went to...
Oh my God, I didn't know that. That's so sick.
Yeah, and then I went to Hearst, which is like Harper's Bazaar. They're both glossy magazine publishing houses. And it was because I was never going to be a traditional accountant. I'm just not that way inclined. I like getting dressed up and I just had a different mentality for my career. So I did it in industry, made it quite tricky because there's a lot of exams to be a chartered accountant. Well, not as much as medicine, but 15, and you do them whilst you work. And when you work in industry, you don't actually get time off. So for like 4 years of my life, 3.5, 4 years, I was just doing loads of exams. But I, qualified in 2020 and then got to like 2022 and realized that I was sort of not living what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I was actually fulfilling my passion. And everyone kept saying to me when I was doing my exams, like, you just have to qualify and then you can figure out who you are. Just qualify, then figure it out. I was like, fine, okay. And then it got to that stage in 22 where I was like, well, I've been qualified for a while now, so what now? And I kind of had conversations with people where I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And someone actually wisely said to me, they were like, what pisses you off? Like, what makes you really angry? And I said, gender pay gap, the inequalities that we face in society, like all of these things. And they were like, that's it. That's what you need to do. Like, go and fix that. And I was like, you can't fix that. And they were like, yeah, you can. Figure that out and then go and do that. And sort of how it all started, I just thought, well, the way I would fix it would be to teach finance at schools. And therefore we would basically have a financially educated next generation and we wouldn't end up with what we have, which is all these inequalities across gender and society and even like culturally. And and then the next thing I know, I was running Ellent, which is my company that teaches finance in schools and all over now. And then social actually came after that, really. Like social media and that side of my life was just a marketing tool for my business that then went a bit viral and now is such a large part of my life.
We need to come on to the gender pay gap because I know that you explain it in such a good way. But before that, just to give you a little bit of context, myself and Abby met about 1.5 years ago, and Abby is one of the most hardest working people and also I think dedicated to the mission because when I met you, you were waking up, was it 5 a.m. to get the news, like to get the finance headlines?
Yeah, so I wake up at 5:20 every morning and I read I'm about to regurgitate what I say on my social media. Read the news so that you don't have to. I read the finance news every morning and then I turn it into like 3 snippets of the things I think are important. And then I post it on my stories. I also do like a TikTok video where I read it out as well. And and then I crack on with my day. I don't know. Everyone's like, why 5:20? And I'm like, because 5:15 felt too early and 5:30 felt too late. I don't know. Like it was just, I just do it. And I just really enjoy it. And then it sets me up, I suppose. But yeah, I won't lie. I'm not like the biggest evening person. Like a lot of people can work late into the night. That's not who I am. I'm kind of an early gal.
It's the dedication, I think, to the mission. I could go into my financial mistakes to, till for the whole of the entire podcast. Like, this is so embarrassing. I remember when I first started making money on YouTube, and no 21-year-old should be trusted with YouTube money. It's absolutely just not, that should not happen. And I woke up one morning and I decided to buy a Range Rover. I just went out and I bought a Range Rover in cash.
Whoa.
And that was
How
decision.
old were you?
22.
Spicy.
22. It was a really, really stupid decision.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
It's not because I could have invested that money. I could have put that into my pension pot. A car is just probably the worst financial decision to make.
It's not the best, but do you know what? At 70 years old, you can turn around at the dinner table and be like, do you know what, guys? At 21, I bought a Range Rover in cash. People are going to be like, why? Well, my question would be why. But also, that's so great. I think that's hilarious.
It is funny now.
It is, but it's also think of the learnings that you got from that. Like, and actually, yeah, maybe someone should have stepped in. Maybe we needed me, but that is wild.
Not my finest hour, but
you still have it.
I actually am selling it at the moment, and the loss I have made, obviously, because cars depreciate, the loss I have made on that car is, oh my God, it makes me feel violently ill now that I'm more financially educated.
Yeah.
But I didn't get a financial education from my parents necessarily. I didn't get it at school. And that's why I think what you do, especially for women, is unbelievably important. I had a meeting with some tax advisors the other day, very, very, very exciting. And she was really good. She was trying to get an idea of me as a person. And I said, look, I like to know the education. I might still make a silly decision, but as long as I know my options. So even if I knew, okay, this car's going to depreciate, you'd probably be better off putting it in this, that, and the other, and I still made that decision. I think that's okay as long as you're educated.
Yeah.
But what would you say are the biggest financial issues facing women in general?
Do you know what? One of the biggest is not being aware that we need an emergency fund pot for more than just, the car breaks down. We need an FU pot. Like, it's been phrased in lots of different ways. We can call it what we want, but it's effectively a pot that gives us more freedom and says, like, we can leave, because we are still the first of our generation. Like, my mum had certain freedoms, her mum had certain freedoms, but financially, we've been getting freer and freer. Like, I think, my nan probably would never have thought of living on her own. My mum lived on her own only for a little bit, and I live on my own and probably will for a little bit longer. And it's all these little things that we're forgetting as women is very new to us. And actually protecting ourselves and having an FU pot to secure yourself gives you the ability to say no, gives you the ability to walk away if things aren't good for you, is really important. Something I think comes up time and time again for the women I talk to is like, they don't feel like they can leave a relationship or they can leave a job because they're not financially ready. And actually that breaks my heart, because I think if we were teaching this younger, or just teaching it in general, women would be more aware of this, and it would give them that power back that they deserve and that we have earned. That would probably be one of the main things I would say. It's something I'm really passionate about, is like people understanding that money isn't just about the boring tax codes and the boring, ways that we can budget. It's about freedom and buying that time for ourselves, and investing in ourselves as well, which is really, really, really important.
If a woman is listening right now and she's thinking, I don't know if I have a FU pot.
Yeah.
Do you have a value in mind of what that FU pot should be?
So they say an emergency fund pot, which is slightly different, but very similar. It's like 3 to 6 months of your expenses sat in an account that you can get access to quickly. So it gives you the ability to like have it there if you need it, to stop you from going into like debt very quickly. And an FU pot sits, like, it's almost like the sister to that. It should sit alongside it. And you should, once you've hit that number in your emergency fund pot, maybe that FU pot sits on the side. It's always only ever in your name as well. Cannot make that clear enough. Like, even if you are married, even if you have been with your partner for X amount of years, always in your name and your name only, and no one can touch that, because that is what true freedom is for it to be yours. And I would say a number that makes you feel safe in a situation that you've got a niggle in your back of your mind about. Like, we all do. We all have a niggle in our head of something that doesn't quite sit right. And for someone that might be a relationship, for someone that might be their job, or it might be, you know, the friendship group that they're in, and having enough money in that account to be able to cut on whatever that niggle is when you know it's the right time. That's what I would say, because for someone, it might genuinely be they don't like their job and they want to be able to leave, or maybe they're going to need to give themselves 3 months grace to be able to find a new job. For someone else, it might be I am in a 10-year relationship that I need to leave. I'm going to need probably 6 months of expenses, or even just 2 weeks of expenses so that I'm able to leave. Do you know what I mean? It looks different for everyone. Yeah, it is unique. And like you said, you spoke to a tax advisor. And the one thing I always like to stress to people is I can provide you as much education as physically possible, and I will, on social media and across whatever platform. But when it comes to specific circumstance, if you do need individual help, please go and ask for it, because everyone is so different and your unique circumstance will determine what the education is that you need. And I think something that is really important as well is that you find someone that resonates with you. If you're sat across from an accountant that makes you feel worse about yourself, walk out the door. Accountants are like hairdressers. Go and find one that suits you. Not every hairdresser does every hairstyle. And therefore you need to find the one that specializes in blondes. Do you know what I mean? Like it's fine. And that's okay. I think a lot of people meet accountants and have one bad experience and go, oh, all accountants are awful, which is, you know, not true. So yeah, that would be something else I would say to people, is like a lot of women, I think there's this bad stigma of, you know, they don't feel represented in the finance and the accountancy space. So then they just they're not interested in it anymore.
I also think women have this tendency to try and take everything on themselves. Oh, yeah. And it was a man who recommended this tax advisor to me. And actually I was like, oh God, it was a fairly reasonable fee. And I was like, oh my God, if I'd done this a couple of years ago, that would have been great, especially as a woman as well. A lot of the time you're in spaces where there's not many women, or you don't know other people who can give you that advice. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening now, they want to know when they should maybe speak to a financial advisor or look for a professional to give them services. Are there any hallmarks that you would say that's a sign that you should be getting a professional's help with your finances?
I think the large hallmarks are when you're earning over £100,000, you start to lose what's called your personal allowance. So everyone in the UK gets £12,570 of income before they start paying tax. But when you earn over £100,000 a year, you start to lose that. You also lose other things. Like if you're a parent, you lose things like access to childcare hours and all sorts of fun stuff. In the 60 to 80 bracket, you lose child benefits. There's a lot going on. So sometimes there could be justification that once you get over £100,000, it might be worth speaking to an accountant just to make sure that you're being really tax efficient with things like your pension, you know, child benefit, childcare hours, if that's applicable to you. When your savings go beyond a number that you're like, maybe you're maxing out your ISA, you're maxing out all of your areas, maybe worth speaking to a financial advisor, maybe. But I won't lie to you, I do sit on the fence of you can do a lot of this yourself. The only reason to get people involved is if you are so strapped for time, and actually paying them makes financial sense, because for you to do it yourself would cost you more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that's where I would put the metric. If your time is good used on learning about it, educating yourself and doing it yourself, please do it. Because some financial advisors do charge quite high fees and it can really eat in to your investment portfolio over the future. But if it's cheaper to outsource, like, you know, with lots of things, then do that. Most accountants will give you like some of their time for free as well at the beginning, just to check in with your own finances. I'm very anti people at the very beginning having financial advisors, because if you are just starting to learn and then you hand it over to someone else, you're going to give them too much control, because they're never going to probably spend as much time as you need them to educating you, because obviously it doesn't really financially benefit them for you to know too much. So I would say do a lot of the education first and then go over to someone, because it actually makes sense. Don't hand over all of your power right at the beginning.
I've had an accountant horror story. Thankfully, I'm not with now, but that really resonates with me because I knew nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. So then I didn't know when things were not being done correctly.
Exactly.
And I think AC20 rule, I think that you can get yourself up to a standard where you have a baseline understanding and then you can't be taken for a ride. The benefits on top are minimal, you know?
Yeah. And have the confidence as well. If they're saying something to you that you don't understand, it's not that you aren't intelligent, it's they've not learnt it well enough to be able to explain it to you. And that's really important. Like, they might just not be very good. And I think sometimes we have these bad mentalities. Women are terrible for it. I'm terrible for it sometimes, is I just assume everyone knows more than me, which is half the time not true. And so I go, oh, no. Like, and when they start using really difficult language, I sit there and think, oh, I must Google that later. But now in the last few years, I've got really big girl pants about it and been like, what does that mean? And 9 times out of 10 as well, the amount of uncomfortable, like awkward shuffles in their chair where they can't quite explain it themselves. I quite enjoy it now. Gives me a bit of a thrill, because when people say things, even if when I'm on like a panel doing a talk and someone next to me says something, I'm like, can you explain that to the room? Because I don't think everyone's going to understand that like jargon you've just said. And I've had it before where someone's like snapped at me and like, will you explain it? I'm like, okay, it's this. And then explained the principle. But people don't like being called out, but you should, because if you feel like someone is kind of baffling you with jargon, call it out, because it's not fair.
I think that's such an important point for the listeners, because the most intelligent doctor I've ever worked under, she was an internationally recognised doctor in her specialty. We had consultants coming from all over the world to shadow under her. She would be the first person in a meeting to say, oh, sorry, I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Because intelligent people are not afraid of looking stupid because they have confidence in their intelligence.
Exactly.
And if that gives someone listening the confidence to ask questions, because that's only going to make you like more intelligent, I think that's such an important point.
Yeah, and I say it to friends. I even say it on social, like, if you ever hear something that you don't understand and you're too embarrassed to ask at the time, always DM me. I'm all right. Like, I'm not going to bite your head off. Like, come and ask someone or go and ask someone after, like, because it's so important that you don't just sit back and think, I'm not intelligent enough because I don't understand it. Reverse it. Be like, they weren't clever enough to be able to make that make sense to me. Because so much of it is like really confusing language to explain something that's really very simple, which I don't like. But that is finance. And I think it's why we've been kind of out of the loop financially for such a long time, because even the language is very masculine. It's not being very inclusive, and that needs to change.
Well, that's a brilliant segue, because we are coming on to the section of the podcast called Buy or Bye Bye, where I'm going to show you something. I would love to know whether you'd buy this thing or say bye-bye, as in goodbye.
Okay.
The only rule is we love nuance. Social media tends to not have enough of it. So if you're on the fence, then please feel free to share your thoughts.
Okay, good. That's what I was about to ask. Can I be more specific? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Starting off with budgeting apps.
Okay. Controversially, bye-bye. Because I think people jump to these too early. I think people use them as a bit of a crutch, and actually you can do a lot of the heavy lifting yourself very early on, and should do. So what these effectively do is go through your bank statements and tell you where you're spending your money, and then will suggest ways you can split out your money. But they're doing it based on like algorithms and percentages that don't necessarily know you in and out. And what I think you should do first is download your bank statement, go through it and do your own spreadsheet on it. Or just go through your bank statement on your phone and write notes of like where you are spending and where you're not spending, and start there. Because I think sometimes these sort of are like a pretty picture over your bank statements, but they're not giving you the full intricate details. So yeah, I think once you're a bit more confident and you're aware of your spending habits, then go here. I think these can mask spending habits, which I think is a bit dangerous.
There's something uniquely humbling about going through your bank statement and you're like, has my card been stolen?
Oh, I know. And it happens to everyone. We all have weird spending habits, and also like different times of the year, like spending is quite seasonal. I just think, I think you should, if you're going to look through your bank statements, do it intentionally. Don't let an app just tell you the highlights until you're more comfortable.
Nice. I love that. I don't know what this is. Cash stuffing.
So I think what we're referring to here is like when people put cash in envelopes. So you can obviously budget your money out. I'm going to say bye-bye because it's a bit old school.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stocks and shares ISA.
Yeah, we can do that one very easy. 100% buy. So stocks and shares ISA. So in the UK, we have 4 adult ISAs. So ISA stands for individual savings account, and you can have a cash, a stocks and shares, or you can have a lifetime or an innovative finance. The stocks and shares ISA refers to, it's basically an investment ISA where you can invest in the stock market as in its entirety within a tax wrapper. So the ISA element, individual savings account, refers to the fact that any money you make in there, so with investments, it's like dividends or capital gains, is tax free. So dividends, sorry, it's jargon that spreads out. Dividends are if you buy a stock or share, they mean the exact same thing basically, in a company. Let's imagine it's like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola shares are not going to like skyrocket because they've been what they are. They're just going to probably grow slowly over time, but they're not going to skyrocket like the likes of AI shares. So what Coca-Cola does often is it releases dividends out to its shareholders. It does this for two reasons. One, it incentivizes people to continue to buy dividends or buy stocks in Coca-Cola. But two, you may be a shareholder of Coca-Cola. You may own £10 of it. But who else is a shareholder is its CEO, C-suite. Dividend income is usually taxed at a lower rate than salaried income. So a lot of businesses release dividends because if they release it to their one shareholder, they have to release it to all. And so often it means, yes, the CEO of Coca-Cola is getting a slightly larger chunk than you are probably as a £10 investor. But that's what happens. And so across the board, they're releasing dividends. Mm-hmm. So it's income that gets released from your ownership of a share. And then the other way to make money in stocks and shares is through selling the share for more than you've paid for it, which is called a capital gain. So you're making a gain on your investment. And any money, like I said, that's made, whether it's dividends or capital gains in a stocks and shares ISA, is tax-free. You can only put up to 20K per person per tax year into a stocks and shares ISA, but it is something that I'm like a huge advocate of because it is a really great way to build wealth over time. The barrier to entry now with stocks and shares ISAs is so low. And I think a lot of people have this like bad misinterpretation that it's gambling if it's investing. And for the majority of the time, you can educate yourself in such a way that it doesn't have to be like that. If
someone is very new to a stocks and share ISA,
yep,
what would be your first steps? Do you have any platforms you recommend? Or
so I work with Trading 212 purely because I have had Trading 212 shares for years and years because they're low fees and super easy to use. But there are other platforms online. You just need to search for the one that suits you. I would say if you're just starting out as well, when you are finding them low fees, like I said, one that makes you feel comfortable as well, because some of the platforms can be a bit confusing. And make sure as well that you're not just taking the one that your dad used or your friend used, like do your own research. And yeah, like I said, you can start really small. It's kind of like buying clothes on ASOS nowadays. Like the platforms are so user-friendly. You deposit money into the account. I'm making it very oversimplified, but there's a few steps to open the stocks and shares ISA. Deposit money into the account and then just buy individual shares, or you can buy ETFs, which are like groups of shares. But I think we'd need like an entire other hour to go through like the intricacies of this. But yes, stocks and shares ISAs, it's a definite buy for me.
And I would also plug your socials as well. As if you want like more information, then
exactly,
we will leave Abby's socials in the description.
I've definitely got lots of investing education there.
Buy now, pay later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Buy now, pay later. The way this works, if you're unclear, because a lot of people think that this is just like borrowing money for free. But nothing is ever free. You see buy now, pay later often on like clothing websites. It's a very pink credit, pink debt, where this is a debt. You are borrowing money, and it's been very pinkified in the last few years because it often gets put on things like clothing sites and places where it's like considered more feminine purchases, right? But I think it's become more and more dangerous nowadays that you can find this on like Deliveroo and all the rest of it, like spreading the cost of like food across a few days. I just feel like it incentivizes people to spend money that they don't have, and that worries me. So these companies like make money by going to the clothing provider, let's say that you're buying a dress online, and saying, this person wasn't going to buy the dress, but they did because they used buy now, pay later. So you owe us a fee. So that's how they make their money. They make their money through the merchants, which is okay, but it's a slippery slope with, yes. And if you use buy now, pay later really wisely and you just pay off those 3 installments very quickly, it may be efficient for you to spread the cost over 3 months. But if you are at any risk of purchasing outside of your means, i.e. you're spending more than you earn, and you miss a payment, it can very quickly spiral. Those fees can get very spicy very quickly. The interest can really ramp up. And for years, buy now, pay later wasn't attached to your credit rating. Now it is. And so it can then have really detrimental impacts on your credit rating, which can then impact your ability to lend in the future, which I think is one of the reasons I say bye-bye. Because unless you are really comfortable knowing that that money is there to pay that off, then don't use it.
I didn't realise it wasn't attached to your credit rating, and now it is.
Yeah, so it was about a few years ago, because it was such a new kind of concept. These credit rating agencies hadn't caught up yet, and now they have, and it's now part of it. And it can therefore have impact on like the amount of money that you end up lending for your mortgage, for instance, because the banks don't like that you have other debts, basically. It can impact, or you've like missed a payment, can then impact the percentage you get from your mortgage and all the spirals.
Yeah. Okay. Getting a financial advisor in your 20s?
Or I think if you are earning less than 100,000, this isn't a set number.
Yeah.
But bye-bye. If you are getting to a place, like I said in the earlier, where you've got enough money that it doesn't make sense for you to manage it yourself, then maybe. You know, if you come into a windfall of money, or you get a huge pay rise, maybe. But I do think it's so important that you do enough education in your 20s and take it on yourself. I think some financial advisors prey on vulnerable people and say like, oh, start early because then we'll help you. But often all it means is for them, their interest is compounding as well as yours. But they can have then like huge percentages off of your pensions and your income for over a long period of time. And also, if your financial advisor isn't giving you education, they're just doing for you, that would also be a huge bye-bye for me.
Without going into detail on the stocks and shares and ETFs, I would just like to share another semi-bad financial mistake that I made, but actually I don't see it as a financial mistake. In the end, I still ended up better off, but I just want to share this story as an evidence of how far you can get doing it yourself, even if you don't always make the right decision. So maybe this was a little bit after I bought my Range Rover by waking up and deciding I was going to buy a Range Rover. I think maybe I had a bad month on social media and I was like, like, so this could go away at any moment. Fuck, shit.
Yeah.
What I need to sort myself out. I need to make sure that I'm looking after this money because it's not just this endless supply. So I started doing my research and I started learning about the stocks and shares ISA, ETFs. So maybe would you mind explaining a little bit about what ETFs are, and then I'll continue the story.
Yeah, of course. So ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund, and effectively it's a group of stocks and shares. So, by the way, so stocks and shares, like I said, it does mean the exact same thing. It's like in the US, they use the word stock to refer to what we're talking about. Australia use the word share quite frequently. We in the UK use them interchangeably, but effectively it means like a portion of a company that you own. And you can buy individual stocks and shares. So you could buy specific stock and share in like Coca-Cola or Disney, versus you can have ETFs, so exchange traded funds, where they're groups of funds. You can have like specific equities, which stocks and shares are also known as equities, equity ETFs, which like the S&P 500 is a very common one, where it's the top 500 US companies listed on the US stock exchange. You can also have like AI ETFs, where they're tracking groups of just AI companies. You can also have like thematic ETFs, which are like ETFs in a certain theme. So particularly ESG funds. So like ones that really speak to the ESG. You can even have like motorsport ETFs that like follow specific motorsport companies. Like that's what we're talking about here, that it's groups. So instead of just having one individual stock, you're having like a basket of different stocks and shares. Or there could be also assets and bonds in there as well, but we won't go too deep, because the reason you have often ETFs is that you're diversifying your risk, so spreading across multiple as opposed to just one.
So that's why I went for ETFs, because I thought, well, if the Coca-Cola shares go down, if the ETF has all these different companies, it's not if one goes down, I still might keep going up if all the other companies are going up in value. Yeah. So that was my thought process. So obviously it's a diverse group of them. I learned this. This is valuable financial advice that I learned off my own back. Just from social media research. And then I set up my account. I had a Vanguard account and to buy my ETFs. And every month I just used to go down the list and go, oh, I'll buy £5 of this one, £5 of that one, £5 of this one. And every month I used to go, oh, that looks like a fun name. I'll do that. And it was maybe 3 years later that my boyfriend was like, oh, so they're quite diverse anyway.
Yeah.
So you're better off just putting into 2, maybe 3, one like global ECF and then maybe one country specific ECF. If, I think I had like 40 different ECFs or something ridiculous.
That's absolutely fine though. Like, do you know what I mean? At least you were doing something.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what's important. And I think, maybe for admin and simplicity, you didn't need 40, but also you weren't to know. You never know. You could have been in that one ECF that like went to the moon, and then your boyfriend would be laughing. Well, you'd be laughing at your boyfriend, being like, excuse you, my idea was great. But I get what you mean. Yes, you can go a bit wild. And also I think that is something I would warn people at the beginning, is it can be very tempting to like use it a bit like Monopoly money. And be like, oh, I want to buy that with no real like thought process behind it. If I'm honest. Yeah.
Having that baseline knowledge and maybe not making all the right decisions, but sometimes it's important to start.
Oh, 100%. And also it's important to have a couple of things in there that are just for you. I invested in Ferrari, the individual stock, because I'm a big Formula One fan and I just thought it was really funny. But I know full well, because I watch the Formula One, the Grand Prix every week, Ferrari not doing bits. And also they've just released an EV vehicle. Oh, it was embarrassing for everyone involved. And so the Ferrari stock went down and I know that and I'm okay with it. At this point, I probably have barely any investment left. But like I put a very small amount in there, but it is in there for me to have a little giggle when I look at. And that's what's important to me. And so therefore investing doesn't always have to be super serious all the time. Like there can be parts of it that can be just for you, just like everything in life. So there's lots of things I invest in that technically might not bring an immediate return, and it's not going to look like the S&P 500 and return 25% in a 2-minute period.
Yeah.
But some things can just be for you, and they can just be okay because that's what they teach you something, and that's okay.
Would you say that feeds into you enjoying the process of putting attention towards your finances? Because I think when we take all the fun out of something, all it can sometimes do is lead us to avoid it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's been finance for such a long time. I think there's a lot of people in power that have really profited off of us being fearful, not talking about money. And actually, I really resonated with Sophie, obviously, with the 93% Club, where she was saying when that girl said to her, like, didn't someone tell you it was like rude to talk about money? I hate that. It is not rude to talk about money. If anything, it's dangerous not to. And I think there is this like old school mindset or old money mindset of like, don't talk about it. I'm like, well, yeah, we don't have to if we've all got it. Like if I was sat on millions, I wouldn't have to be constant, but we don't all have that privilege. And therefore we should be talking about money and also holding people accountable to make sure that the system becomes easier, not harder for us.
Also, 100% they are talking about money with their kids.
Of course,
the whole don't talk about money, don't talk about money.
Yep.
But you're all having those conversations around the dinner table. Yep. So actually,
my company teach finance in schools, and we're having a little bit of an issue over the last year because we love all our schools, but we used to have this situation where because we teach in all schools, so private and state, and a lot of our private schools will then bring in their local state schools. However, because of the VAT reduction, like obviously removal of the VAT, the increase basically of the VAT on school fees, because they used to be charities and now they're not, they're run as businesses. It's meant that we're seeing a real drop in like our private schools basically bringing in their local state schools. And actually we're seeing a bit of a change with our state schools as well. And it's really frustrating. Did bring it up with the Chancellor as well. And I did say to her, like, what are we doing about financial education? She said, I say we, as if I'm like sat next to her in the Treasury. But like I said, what's going on? And unfortunately, the answer is just like nothing. And, we have like Martin Lewis or Rishi Sunak and all these people like come to the forefront and say like finance should be in the education system. I'm like, yeah, we've been saying that for years. What are you going to do about it? Go on. Like, off you go. And no one does anything. Everyone just like talks about it. We all say it's a lovely idea and we just don't do it, which is another reason I just set up Ellen, because I was like, right, let's just go and do it then. Let's go teach. Like I'm going tomorrow to teach. I won't lie to you. It's not great use financially of my time because we charge our schools very little, but we have to charge them something for lots of reasons. One, if you don't charge anything, the schools don't value it as much. And so we've had it at the very beginning, I didn't charge a lot. And we had a lot of schools like forget that we were coming or like, not like not prioritize it as much as they should. So we do charge, but because we have to also pay for, I have other teachers that come as well, because I can't unfortunately go to every single school all over the UK, and I have to pay for their time, but also understanding, yeah, it's like we want qualified professionals and we want really good lessons and things like that. So that's why we charge. But anyway, we're going off on a tangent. I think it is just important that someone's doing something, and I don't personally think that the government are doing enough right now, because if they wanted to, they could, but they don't really.
And it doesn't make sense to me, having come from healthcare, where we're all going to get old, we're all going to need looking after, and not necessarily having a pension that looks after us, you know? And then the government pays the cost of that.
Yeah. But we do, the taxpayer.
Yeah,
the taxpayer pays the cost. And there is a world in which the state pension may not be there for you and I. Like, that's a really uncomfortable conversation, but it's one that we're all kind of hoping that never happens. But like, the state pension is an extortionate amount of money, and it comes out of the taxpayers of today. Like the older generation will say things like, oh, well, I paid into the pension, I paid into the state pension, therefore I'm entitled to it. That's not how it works at all. The state pension is a benefit. It's the same as like the universal credit. It's paid for out of the taxpayers of today. And the problem is we have an aging population that are all retiring earlier, and we don't have a growing population of taxpayers because we're not producing offspring and all the rest of it, which, you know, is all right.
Yeah.
But the problem is that when the state pension was brought in, on average, I think, I can't remember the stats completely, but I think we were living like maybe 3 or 4 years past state pension age. So the government were having to pay for 3 or 4 years maybe. Now, some people are living 40 years past state pension age. Well, state pension age is 66 and rising.
Yeah.
So some people are getting to their hundreds and they've been on that state pension. And it's not a load of money, but it's about 12,500 a year. And the government have to find that for all of these state pensioners. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they don't deserve it. And I don't want any state pensioner to ever be in poverty. That is not what we want. But for instance, doesn't matter who you are. If you're a UK resident and you hit that state pension age, you can take it regardless of whether you're sat in a £10 million house with multiple like sources of income, or you are literally just relying on the state pension. Both are entitled to it. And I think there's a conversation that needs to happen before it gets to a point where we just cannot afford it.